I can tell you where to see some elves.
Yeah. Do I have to go over the Atlantic?
Yes, you have to go to Iceland.
All right, tell me about it. I'm not going though.
Do you want this to be the next thing?
Yeah. Actually, you know what? Let's talk about the elves, and then we'll wind it down. Because
this is a quick story.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So the elves of Iceland. So my brother and I, some other friends, not friends, never talked to them again, but we all went to Iceland on a whim. We just got on an airplane and went, and we were there in September. Near the end of September, so rainy season was starting, and I say rainy, but it's winter, and we're winding down. It's getting to the end of the trip, and we had experienced all sorts of magical stuff. Iceland is bizarre. It's the craziest place I've ever been on the planet. It's just insane.
That's saying something for you.
I can't. It leaves me speechless just thinking about it. I have hundreds of photos that I took while I was there, and they are just, you can't put it in. It looks fake. It looks like it's just volcanic mountains and massive glaciers and crystal clear glacier pools and rivers that are like bizarre. The biggest waterfall in Europe is in Iceland. It's massive. Like you can't even. It's bigger than Niagara Falls, I think, as like far as height goes or something like that. But it's the biggest waterfall in Europe. And they have legends in every crook and cranny, Norse legends in Iceland. And I don't know how you feel about lowercase g gods, but there's a couple of them in Iceland.
I read Psalm 82, so.
Okay, well, there's a couple of them out there. And anyway, that's the backdrop. So we're getting ready to fly out. We're flying out the next day. We're going to do one more camping trip because all we do is camp. We don't stay in hotels. And so we were camping on this place. It's called Thingvellir is how you would say it. It's written in Norse, so it doesn't look like that, but it translates to that if we were to speak it in English. And this place is basically the birthplace of democracy for Iceland. So it is their hallowed ground for everything that they know Iceland to be. And it has been used for hundreds of years as their place of judgment. So they would pass judgments here. They would solve conflicts here in civilized manners. So when the Danes came over to bring Christianity to this pagan Norse Iceland, they did so extremely violently. And if you were not going to convert to Christianity, they were just going to kill you. And so there's this place in Thingvellir. It's really insane that they used Thingvellir as the place for this. But this is where they would massacre Icelanders who weren't going to convert. And so there have been burnings here. There have been beheadings. Sometimes they would throw them off of the cliffs because there's a river and then there's a big giant cliff, and you could throw people into the river, they figured out. And now it is a tourist trap, unfortunately. So when we went there, we had this understanding that we were on this hallowed ground, but the 500,000 other people who were just reading the signs and looking at the cliff and the waterfall and all that, they weren't experiencing that in the same way that AJ and I were, because we were there for a reason. These people were just seeing the sights. So we knew that these were killing grounds. And the most iconic part of Thingvellir is their drowning pools. And it's this part of the river that opens up. So it's like a river, and then it mellows out slightly at the base of this cliff. And there's these pools that are just black water. Because it's a volcanic riverbed. So it's just black and it's icy cold. And what the Danes would do, and what anybody would do who was passing this kind of judgment there, is they would tie or chain a victim's neck to one end of a rope, and they would drag them across the pools, the drowning pools. And the purpose of this was to drown them in the middle. So they would have the ropes on each end with people pulling on the ropes, and the person would just be dangling, drowning in the middle with their hands and legs, bound. And they would drown there, and then they would get pulled out the other side dead. And this happened to a number of people there. And do you remember just a minute ago we were talking about magical places?
Mm-hmm.
This place was one such place, and it transcended beyond. I think that real people, i.e., not NPCs, have this ability to sense a place, but it is largely neutered out of them, basically. And they respond in strange ways when they're in these locations. I went to Arizona State for sociology, so I have this way of looking at and thinking about people. And as a whole, I think that people can feel magical places and not know what to do with that. So these people's purpose was to throw money in these pools. And I'm telling you, hundreds of thousands of dollars in this pool. And you can see it all along the riverbanks, coins, all sorts of gold and silver coins. And it was to the point where you could get rich. If you went there and you tried to clean that pool out, you'd probably come out feeling pretty good. The reason I'm saying this is because a lot of Icelandic legends and lore kind of revolves around treasure.
Mm.
I find it ironic that this is also the place that we may or may not have seen elves, in this magical location with this river full of golden coins. So anyway, fast forward. We make a mental note, we're going to come back to these drowning pools at night when nobody's here. We're camping in the park. So we're the only ones camping in the park because only Americans would be crazy enough to be out here camping in winter in Iceland at Thingvellir. So we're out here, me and my brother, because the other guys were pansies. So like we get up in the middle of the night and we tell them, we're going to go. We'll be back. Like, I don't know when. It's about a 2-mile walk. We set out. It's completely dark. We don't have flashlights or anything. My brother and I, we never bring flashlights when we camp. It's just a thing that we don't do. And if we have it, it's kind of in our pack as a last ditch sort of thing. It's kind of one of those connect to the earth ideas. But I actually have a tattoo on the top of my head that's an Icelandic stave for seeing in the dark.
Wow.
So we're very connected to the natural way of things. And we go there and we're walking along the road. Nothing's happening. It's the middle of the night. It's freezing cold. The stars are kind of out, but it's not like you can point up at the stars and be like, oh, look how beautiful the stars are. You can see the light. There's moonlight. And we get to this location that we hadn't previously noticed during the day. And it's this grove of pine trees. And this is very rare in Iceland because the Vikings had cut down all of the trees when they first went to Iceland for their boats and their settlements. And they had no idea about deforestation. So unbeknownst to themselves, they crippled the entire country and chopped down all of the trees. So when you come across a grove of trees, it's weird.
Stands out.
It's a rare sight. And we walk in through these trees because there's kind of like a trail that weaves through it, like an unofficial trail. And it's very clear that these are old woods. Like these are the type of trees that look back at you when you walk through them. And it gets so dark that we can't, as they say, you can't see your hand in front of your face. It was like that. Like it was just pitch black in these trees. And so we just go to the tree line and we walk along the tree line. We're trying to get to the drowning pools. We're not trying to get killed in these woods. So we sort of approach the trail that's going to walk us on the side of the river opposite the cliff. So, we're walking on this side. The river is between us and the cliffs, and we're on our way to the drowning pools. We're getting closer and closer. And as the cliff starts to come around like a bend, sort of, there's like rock structures on top of the cliff, like volcanic rock structures and just pillars that they call elf towers in Iceland. And they are essentially built by the elves, and they signify that elves live here. And they're natural. They're not built, they're natural. And the idea is that they kind of bubble, it's lava that long ago bubbled out of the earth through like holes in the ground, I guess, and they make these sort of little pillars. Okay, so there's those, and there's just piles of rocks and stuff. It's a scraggly top. We're probably talking, I don't know, 60 feet tall. And we can look up to the top of the cliff. So we're getting close to these drowning pools, and we're just kind of like scanning the cliff top. And when we get to the pools, we're sort of looking in, we're seeing the moonlight glisten off all the coins on the bottom, and the water is pitch black. And it's just the coldest water you can ever feel, and absolutely pure. You could drink that water, and there's movement. Like I sense a flicker of movement up on top of the cliff. And it's like something that jumped from one elf tower, one rock outcropping to the next. A trick of the eye. I don't know. And so I'm just now paying attention though. So I'm looking, like I'm awake now. And I'm looking and I see another one. And then I see 2 or 3 of them. And at this time I'm slapping my brother and I'm like, dude, do you see that? And like, am I like just losing it here? And you know, like your eyes can play tricks on you if you look at things directly in the dark. So you have to use your peripheral. And scientifically, that's because in science fancy terms, you are actually able to see better in the dark with your peripheral. And so we're kind of like scanning like this to try to like see what we're seeing up here. 5, 10, 15 of these things jumping in between they look like apes. And like, so we're frozen solid down here and up above us. These things have the high ground and they obviously see us. And every now and then they stop like independently because they're all their own little creature, but they stop and they'll like peek out from behind a pillar. They'll peek out from behind the rock outcropping. And then all of a sudden they'll just dart to the next one. This happened for 3 to 5 minutes. And we actually left before it stopped because it was getting to the point where they were very aware of our presence. And obviously we were all too aware of their presence. So we were like, this is not on my bingo card for the night. So I'm heading out. And we, as slowly and quietly as we could, just literally baby walked out of there. And when we kind of got further down next to the trees, we sprinted. The rest of the 2 miles, we sprinted back to camp. That's my elf experience. I don't know if they were elves, but I mean...
Jack, get plane tickets to Iceland.
I'll go with you. I've been meaning to go back.
I wasn't planning on going to Iceland today, but we're gonna have to go.
You'll see stuff, dude. There's stuff in Iceland to see.
Wow.
It's a hidden treasure trove of unexplainable experiences and sightings. It happens all of the time. Like these people believe in them. So like they'll even reroute roads that go through elf land. Like
I've heard of that.
Yeah, they'll do that. We found a cabin. I talked about this a little bit on my podcast, so I feel bad just regurgitating stuff. But we found this little cabin that was filled with school children's like art projects in respect of the trolls in the area. And like off in the distance, there were these 2 giant rock outcroppings that they believe were trolls that were petrified because trolls get petrified in the daylight. And they had obviously legends and lore, right? Like there's no way to prove any of this, but what if? And you know, the validation to believe in this stuff is everywhere in Iceland. And that's what makes it so wonderful, because that is one part of opening portals. You have to believe. You have to believe in portals. If you do not believe in portals, you will never see one until it's forced upon you, which is when the whole globe becomes one.
Yes.
If you this is a huge problem, and that's why everybody thinks people who talk about portals are crazy, is because you cannot look. If we can move mountains through faith, obviously that is a hint. That's a hint. That's him saying, you can move mountains. Okay, I'm pretty sure then that I can see portals too. With faith. And obviously it works both ways. Malicious people, evil people see portals too.
Yeah.
They have a different type of faith. But what goes around comes around. And, there we go. There's my elf.
Well,
my elf stuff.
John, sir, you are a treasure trove, and I highly encourage people to check out your podcast.
Thank you.
21 CD podcast. John has recently started the show.
Very fresh.
And you are, listen, man, you're a gem, and you will do great things with podcasting as long as you keep talking portals to us.
I'm doing my best.
No, you're doing great, man. So I do appreciate you sharing all this stuff. What a fantastic conversation this was. And we're gonna do more here for an overtime. We're gonna get into the abandoned portal building. And we'll get into we're going to get into your theories and thoughts and stuff. And we're just going to see where the conversation takes us. But right now, Tony needs to pick up Benny from school, or else Benny's going to be crying because Daddy forgot him. And so
can't have that.
Yeah. So we're going to take a little breather, and we're going to come back here in a little bit and record some more. But John, before we get out of here, let people know where they can find you. We mentioned this show several times, 21 CD podcast. That's the number 21 CD podcast. Pretty easy to remember.
Pretty easy.
But where can they find you on social media and all that stuff?
So Tony told me that I've kind of been doing this all wrong. But so right now we're only on YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, and Instagram. If you want to be one of my 100 followers, that would be fantastic. All of my YouTube videos are obviously video format, and I just upload the same thing to Spotify for people who don't like to watch videos. But if you guys want to check me out, it's 21CD, 21CD Studios, and I'm on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, and TikTok.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
You guys can follow him on that social media and obviously the YouTube. I would suggest checking him out on YouTube, Spotify for sure. And your video work is pretty good too. So,
thank you.
You know what you're doing. And we're just learning here. So, if you have any advice for us, it'd be great.
Yeah. Well.
But I think hopefully it may not be the case, but hopefully by the time people hear this, which will be less than a week from the time we're recording, hopefully you'll be on other platforms. We'll talk about it afterwards and stuff,
Okay.
but I'd like to see you get on other platforms, specifically Apple Podcasts.
Okay.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I got to talk to you about the logistics of what you got going on right now so I can better understand. But I think by the time we're done talking, you might be already on other platforms. So
that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So we'll talk about it. But for right now, those places, you said it was YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, and Instagram, right?
Yep.
So obviously TikTok and Instagram are the reels, the little short clips and cool things like that. If you want the show itself in the fullness, you want to hit up YouTube or Spotify at this point. But if you're listening to this and you are like, well, I hate Google and I don't like doing anything other than Apple Podcasts, check there because he might be there now. And if not, please check back again in a week because I almost guarantee you by then he'll be on there.
Just give me a follow somewhere and you'll see a notification that I'm everywhere else when I drop the news.
Yes. Do that. Yes. That's actually a great idea.
I mean, I don't even run my own accounts. My wife does my accounts.
Wise.
So I'll probably just tell her like, hey, like Tony said to do this and she'll get it done for me. So
cool.
I will release at a minimum, I'll just let you guys know if you follow any of those accounts when I'm on all the other ones you know and love. So.
Yes. And what can people expect from the show as far as what's your goals with the show? I know, so we were talking about podcasting before we went live. And when you start a podcast, you have an idea of what you want out of that show.
Yeah.
And that usually changes and evolves as you learn by trial and error.
Right.
So because you're in the beginning stages, what are your goals for your podcast?
So I have a very specific goal. And it's specific and it's broad at the same time. But 21 CD stands for 21st Century Dystopian. So as such, I try to show the world, my viewers, how we are already in this dystopian nightmare of our wildest dreams. So, as such, I discuss relevant modern topics that can include things like news. I just talked about some just relevant news topics the other day on the podcast. But then I also go into this metaphysical realm, which is a very real part of our dystopian reality.
Mm-hmm.
And as such, I will also discuss cryptid sightings, which, as we said before, are going to increase, portals, the sort of science and sociological factors of the portal theory and all of that kind of stuff. So it's kind of broad and focused at the same time.
Awesome. Well, I think that there's a large part of our audience that what you just said is like, oh, yep. Did somebody just say dystopia and portals in the same sentence? Think I'm there. So that's really cool, man. I'm really glad you made the trip out here, and everybody that's listening, I really appreciate you tuning into this awesome episode. If you're a member, just head on over to the app or on the website because there's an overtime waiting for you. We're definitely going to be recording that and getting it out to you. So if you're a member, go ahead and check out that. If you're not a member, we really do appreciate you tuning in and listening to this episode. Remember, today is the day that On Demand is available for The Shape of Shadows, our film. All you got to do is go to merkel.media, no .com, just .media, and there you can stream The Shape of Shadows on demand. So go check that out. If you haven't checked out The Shape of Shadows yet, it is the best film we put out. And we've only ever put out 2 so far. So, but we have shot a 3rd documentary. Next month, we're shooting a 4th documentary. We have already shot our 1st movie. It is actually, I have the rough cut of our 1st movie in my inbox. I got to watch sometime this week. And we're planning our whole next year of shooting and documentaries and all that stuff. Merkel Media is on the rise. We're really trying to do cool stuff. My heart is fully invested in it. And when that happens, good things happen. So friends, go ahead and check out The Shape of Shadows and watch the progress of Merkel Media and how we grow.